For most of adult life, there is one assumption that sits quietly underneath nearly every financial decision. It is rarely spoken out loud. It is rarely questioned. And for a long time, it works well enough that no one notices it. The assumption is simple. If something doesn't work out, I'll have time to fix it. Time is treated like a background asset, invisible, unlimited, and reliable. People don't consciously think this way, but their decisions reflect it. They take on obligations believing they can adjust later. They accept imperfect structures, assuming refinement will come with time. They tolerate inefficiencies because there will be opportunities to correct them. For decades, this assumption is mostly true. Careers evolve. Income grows. Energy is available. Mistakes fade into experience. Time smooths outcomes. Then quietly, that assumption breaks. Not because time disappears, but because its role changes. After 60, time stops being a buffer and starts becoming a constraint. Most people don't notice the moment this shift happens. There is no clear line, no announcement, no warning. Life continues normally. Bills are paid. Plans remain intact. But the financial system begins responding differently. Opportunities narrow. Corrections take longer. Recovery paths require permission instead of effort. What once could be fixed with action now depends on eligibility. This is the moment when many people begin to feel uneasy without knowing why. They haven't lost money. They haven't made obvious mistakes. Yet decisions feel heavier. The assumption that time will absorb missteps is no longer reliable. Earlier in life, time is elastic. You can stretch plans, delay outcomes, accelerate effort. Later in life, time becomes directional. Years move forward with fewer chances to reset. This does not mean people are running out of time. It means time can no longer be used as casually. That difference changes everything. Many financial structures are built on the idea that adjustment is always possible. Loans assume refinancing. Investments assume recovery cycles. Spending plans assume future flexibility. These assumptions are rarely challenged explicitly. They are inherited from earlier stages of life. After 60, they deserve scrutiny. One reason this assumption breaks quietly is that nothing dramatic happens when it does. There is no failure event, no crisis, just a subtle change in responsiveness. Banks become more cautious. Policies tighten, terms harden. What was once negotiable becomes fixed. This is not personal, it is structural. The system is designed to reduce uncertainty as time horizons shorten. From the system's perspective, this makes sense. From the individual's perspective, it feels like friction. Another reason the assumption persists is habit. People have decades of experience relying on time to correct outcomes. That habit is hard to abandon. They continue to plan as if future flexibility will be available on demand. They assume they can revisit decisions easily. But ease fades. Reversing decisions becomes slower, more expensive, and sometimes impossible. This is where regret often begins to form, not because of a bad decision, but because of a delayed realization. People say, "I thought I could change this later." Later arrived differently than expected. The most common place this assumption breaks is in long-term commitments, extended obligations, locked-in structures, plans that assume smooth progression. These commitments feel safe because they are familiar. They worked before. But after 60, the cost of commitment changes. Commitment reduces optionality. Optionality is what time used to provide. When time no longer supplies it automatically, commitment becomes riskier. This is why people sometimes feel trapped by choices they once felt confident about. Nothing went wrong. The environment changed. Another place the assumption breaks is in recovery expectations. Earlier in life, recovery is active. You work harder, you earn more, you rebuild. Later in life, recovery is constrained. Energy is finite. Opportunities are fewer. Disruption carries higher cost. Recovery shifts from effort-based to structure-based. If the structure doesn't support recovery, insecurity grows. Many people sense this instinctively. They become more cautious. They hesitate longer. They second-guess decisions. This is often misinterpreted as fear. It isn't. It is an adaptive response to a new reality. The assumption that time will fix things is being questioned internally, even if not consciously. Another subtle way this assumption breaks is through timing risk. Earlier in life, timing matters less. If markets dip, there is time to wait. If costs rise, there is time to adjust. Later in life, timing matters more. A downturn early in retirement is different from a downturn later. A large expense at the wrong moment has greater impact. Time no longer averages outcomes as reliably. This makes planning more complex. People begin to realize that when something happens matters as much as what happens. That realization undermines the old assumption. The system reflects this change even if people don't. Rules become stricter. Buffers are expected. Margins matter more. People who continue planning under old assumptions feel friction. They feel like the system is pushing back. In reality, the system has always worked this way. The individual's position within it has changed. This is why the assumption breaks quietly. There is no single decision that causes it. It erodes as context shifts. Those who adjust early often don't notice a problem. Those who don't feel increasingly constrained. The challenge is that adjusting requires changing how decisions are framed. Instead of asking, "Can I fix this later?" the question becomes, "How hard would it be to fix this later?" That difference is crucial. Later is no longer a blank space. It has boundaries. Decisions made without acknowledging those boundaries carry hidden risk. This is not about pessimism. It is about accuracy. Life after 60 still contains opportunity, growth, and choice, but it does not contain unlimited reversibility. When people continue operating as if it does, they experience tension. The tension is not emotional weakness, it is structural mismatch. Understanding this assumption and recognizing when it breaks is one of the most important financial shifts later in life. Because once you see it, you stop relying on time to solve problems. You start designing structures that don't need time to rescue them. That shift is subtle, and it changes everything. Once the assumption that time will fix things breaks, a different way of thinking has to take its place. Not urgently, not dramatically, but deliberately. The mistake many people make at this point is trying to restore the old assumption instead of replacing it. They look for ways to buy time. They stretch timelines. They defer consequences. On the surface, this feels logical, but stretching time is not the same as increasing flexibility. In many cases, it does the opposite. When timelines are extended after 60, obligations linger into years where adjustment is harder. What feels like breathing room today becomes pressure later. This is where many well-intentioned decisions quietly backfire. The system often encourages this behavior. Lower payments, longer terms, predictable structures. All of these are framed as safety, but safety defined as predictability assumes stability. And stability is no longer guaranteed in the same way. The deeper issue is not money, it is responsiveness. Earlier in life, responsiveness comes from effort. You respond by doing more. Later in life, responsiveness must come from design. You respond by having room to move. Design replaces effort. This is a difficult transition for people who built their lives through discipline and hard work. They are used to solving problems by pushing harder. After 60, pushing harder is often no longer the answer. This creates frustration. People feel capable but constrained, willing but limited. They interpret this as loss. In reality, it is a signal to change strategy. Another way the broken assumption shows itself is through overconfidence in plans. Plans built earlier often assume smooth progression. Markets recover, costs remain manageable, health remains stable. None of these assumptions are unreasonable, but they are assumptions. After 60, the cost of being wrong about any one of them increases. This doesn't mean planning becomes useless. It means planning must become conditional. Conditional planning acknowledges that some things will not go according to plan. It does not try to predict which ones. Instead, it ensures that when something deviates, response is possible. This is why flexibility becomes more important than optimization. Optimization assumes conditions remain favorable. Flexibility assumes they won't. People who feel increasingly uneasy often sense that their plans require too much to go right. They may not articulate it this way. They simply feel that one mistake could matter too much. That feeling is accurate. It reflects the loss of time as a buffer. Another place this assumption breaks is in how people think about correction. Earlier in life, correction is additive. You add income, you add savings, you add time. Later in life, correction is subtractive. You reduce exposure, you reduce commitments, you simplify structure. Subtractive correction is psychologically harder. It feels like retreat instead of progress. But it is often the correct response. People who resist subtraction often feel stuck. They try to solve later life problems with early life tools. Those tools are no longer appropriate. This mismatch creates tension. Understanding that time no longer rescues structure changes how decisions are evaluated. Questions shift. Instead of asking, "Is this affordable?" the question becomes, "Is this reversible?" Instead of asking, "Can I manage this?" the question becomes, "What happens if I can't?" These questions feel uncomfortable. They challenge optimism, but they produce better outcomes. Another quiet consequence of the broken assumption is how people view risk. Earlier in life, risk is often tolerated because recovery is expected. Later in life, risk must be compensated differently. It must be accompanied by exits. Risk without exits is no longer opportunity, it is exposure. This is why some investments, commitments, or strategies that once made sense stop feeling right. It is not because they are bad, it is because they rely on time to correct them. When time is no longer reliable, those strategies lose their appeal. People who ignore this often feel restless. They keep making adjustments that don't resolve the discomfort. They change products, they chase small improvements, they optimize details, but the underlying assumption remains unchanged. Until that assumption is addressed, nothing feels stable. Replacing the assumption requires accepting a new truth. After 60, security comes from structures that work even when time does not help. This does not mean rushing decisions. It means respecting their permanence. It means favoring simplicity that preserves access, not simplicity that locks things in. It means being willing to leave some capacity unused. Unused capacity feels inefficient, but it is exactly what replaces time as a buffer. Cash that is not allocated, credit that is not used, plans that are not fully committed. These become the new form of time. They absorb shocks, they allow pause, they create choice. People who make this shift often experience relief. Not because risk disappears, but because the feeling of being cornered fades. They know that if something changes, there is space to respond. That knowledge restores confidence. The assumption that time will fix things served its purpose earlier in life. It was reasonable, it was accurate. Clinging to it later is not a moral failure. It is a habit that needs updating. Once updated, financial decisions feel lighter again. Not easier, but clearer. The quiet anxiety many people feel is not warning them of disaster. It is warning them that an old assumption no longer fits. Listening to that warning is not pessimism, it is maturity. And maturity after 60 is what turns uncertainty into calm. If this helped you understand why financial decisions feel heavier than they used to, that awareness matters. After 60, time no longer protects structure the way it once did. If you value calm, clear explanations like this, consider subscribing. This channel is dedicated to helping you understand the systems behind financial decisions, so you can preserve flexibility, protect options, and make choices that still work when life changes.